welcome to Your Real, Your Ideal. We're so excited, as always, to have these conversations. And today we're going to talk about who's the boss. And it's going to be a conversation that Sandy and I both have probably grown up with this challenge of the either us or people around us, females mostly, being called bossy. And um, how do we encourage young girls? How do we become leaders ourselves without being bossy, but also maybe we can be bossy and lifting other women up. So, yep.
And
How you
is it so
doing today?
bad? I think, is it so bad? First of all, being called bossy does not necessitate that's who we are, number one, because bossy isn't a very nice word. And I think everybody that's listening has seen a lot of memes that have gone out showing the young girl saying, a boy's called a leader, a young girl that takes action is called bossy. And I think there's a lot of truth to that, so I don't think, arguing about, I don't like the word, but I love the concept, and I like the idea of helping people reframe that word and that language to something positive. And also, when do you take a step back because you really are being bossy, right? Because
Right.
that's what I really fall on that tightrope of the negative connotation of being bossy and the positive of taking charge and creating positive action. So I have to watch it personally. That's something I have to
I
watch.
think a lot of leaders are the same way. They're trying to find that balance. And I was thinking of when my kids were little, and actually when my nephews were little, and they're in their 30s now, they used to watch Rugrats, and I got kind
Okay.
of hooked on it with them. And my kids didn't watch it, my younger kids, but my oldest, she did get kind of into it because Tom and I were into it. And
You liked it.
I
That's great.
remember Angelica. I don't know if you ever watched it,
Yep.
but Angelica was the bossiest little girl. But I could think back, and I would have to go watch it again. If it would have been a little boy playing that role, he may not have been perceived as bossy. It probably would have been more mischievous, I don't know, or a leader. She had strong leader qualities because she could convince them to do anything. But a little mischievous in there too.
Another one would be Lucy and Peanuts.
Oh, yeah. Great example.
I
Yeah.
I remember, like, even as a child being compared to Lucy and Peanuts because I would run with the boys a lot. I had two brothers and their friends. But Lucy and Peanuts is another one. I did find some of the popular quotes and memes, every Sheryl Sandberg's quote. And tell me if you've ever heard this one. I want every little girl who is told she is bossy to be told she has leadership skills. And
Yes.
Sheryl Sandberg from Facebook. And
Okay,
this,
so let me talk about Cheryl for a minute, because
oh,
that
yeah,
was
yeah.
one of
Got
the
on
things
your list?
I found her. She partnered the Lean In group, which is Sheryl Sandberg,
Okay.
and Girl Scouts. They partnered together about 4 or 5 years ago. I can't remember. I think it was 2017, um, with the ban Bossy, and it's a hashtag ban Bossy,
Okay.
and it's about these creating the atmospheres where girls can be leaders without being called bossy. And so we're going to ban that phrase. And it was her, and also
And boss.
Beyonce was part of this too. And
Really?
so, yes,
Okay.
because she's very much into empowering women and girls. And the website, though, I have loved because I've been looking at it, and hold on. So I'm on my iPad and trying to. So they have resources for girls.
Okay.
They have resources for parents. They have resources for teachers. They have resources for managers. So
Nice.
all levels, all ages. And I clicked on the resources for managers just because I wanted to see. And it's all about empowering women and some things that we may be doing inadvertently, and that um, it reminds me a lot of bias training. Like there's some things that we're doing that we just don't even realize that we're doing, and it creates this awareness. Um, so it's like number one is push back on the likability penalty.
Okay,
Uh,
so let's talk about that a little bit. I'm going to say it. I got to repeat things sometimes. I like how it sounds, but I want to think through what that means. Push back on the likability
Penalty. And so
penalty.
let me read you the first sentence. Women navigate a tightrope between being seen as competent and being well liked.
That's so
So
true.
I exactly. I was
And then isn't it funny how when you go from back to that tightrope, and now you're going to get me riled up because I think this is so true. I have watched it not only with myself, but I watched it with, and especially males will do this, okay, and females will too. They'll join on the bandwagon. Is when a girl or a woman goes off the tightrope on the side of not being likable, they use discrediting language toward them. She suddenly goes from being a leader to being bossy, from being she's a bitch. She's all of a sudden when likable starts going away, there's some very derogatory language that innately is used toward women and I tell you it's the likability factor. And I'll one
yeah,
quick example, and this isn't even in work, is I have an older male relative that when I hung the moon and he loves me, it's all about you're the best. Oh my gosh, you do everything. You're wonderful. And if for whatever reason I'm on the outs with him, he'll just start telling me you're bossy. You're bossy. You have to run the show. And I'm like, I'm been the same person yesterday as I was today. And either you're in a foul mood or something didn't work, and now I've gone from being the best to being bossy just because I went across, like in this phrase, the likability tightrope.
right. Exactly. That's a great example. Another number two is get everyone to sit at the table and participate. Compared to women, men talk more and make more suggestions in meetings, while women are interrupted more, give given less credit for their ideas, and have less overall influence.
Wow.
Isn't that interesting?
And
And
this is
I
all
think that
scientific studies. Is that, I'm assuming based off of the how much they put into this, that this is all.
that's my guess. Now, I haven't dug into the research that they've put behind all of this website. They have a great website though, bandbossy.com. Um,
Okay, I love
but
it.
I was thinking about this one because when I was in school, like I went to a school that was 25% women. It was an engineering school,
Right.
and um, there the men dominated the conversation. Not until probably my junior or senior year when the classes got smaller and I came across professors that were trying to empower the women, and that's when it made a difference, and they were making sure that we were being involved in the conversation. And I noticed it quite a bit my junior and senior year. Now my first 2 years in engineering school, everybody, all the engineers are taking the exact same classes. So it was the general population and big classes, and I didn't see it as much then. Um, so anyway, and you can remember the girls that stood out. I don't remember the guys that stood out, but I do remember some of the girls who stood out in those classes.
Interesting.
I
That
know,
is
isn't it?
interesting. You know what I think, and again, I think we both have a lot of context on this, and it does strike a chord with me when I hear these different things. Um, but I've had the comment made to me, you always have to have your way. Okay. And why that bothers me, and I'm all about owning my shit. I'm very deliberate in what I have an opinion on. So I would tell you there are 100 things that happen during the day that I could care less. What restaurant are we going to? How you fill the dishwasher. I mean, I could just literally name. And so I only speak up if I have an opinion about it and it's sound in my mind and thought through. And so to me, that's completely different than always wanting to have my way. It's choosing my battles wisely and with thought behind them. But when you only speak up on things that matter, it sounds like then it sounds like every time you speak up, it eventually goes the way I want it to go. But in reality, it's like, because I only speak up on things that matter, not on everything. And because I think through and have a very good rationale for it, that's usually why we do it, not because I'm trying to force my way. Um, but it kind of gets back to burn you, it gets back to burn you because it sounds like, well, she always gets her way because I only speak up on things 10% of the time and have taken the time to have a rationale for it because I've already thought it through. So is that negative?
Right. And the things that are important to you, you probably want to hold your ground a little bit because you have thought through them and so there could be that perception of being a little getting your way all the time.
Right. So back to the good advice from last week's episode, choose your battles wisely. I think of that. I don't think that one came up on our list, but that's one I think about a lot. You don't have to
Oh,
don't battle everything. Choose your battles very wisely if it is going to
right.
be a battle.
Yeah, that's good. All right. So one of the things this website does, so I do recommend going to this website if
Yes.
you have little girls, you're working with women, whatever it is, because it goes through the situation. It lists these situation, the solution, and then activities to help you.
Really?
Um,
Oh, that's awesome.
I know. So like here's the number 3 is evaluate performance fairly. We all understand the importance of fair evaluations, yet women are evaluated more harshly than men. The bias is more pronounced when review criteria are unclear. We are more likely to rely on gut feelings and personal inferences.
Very true.
It's just interesting. And then give women credit, so
Will you
this
put that link in the show notes too? In
I
the
will put it in the show notes because so I am only looking at the one for managers. There's again the one for teachers.
right,
Teachers, they are so important on this piece right here in creating a balanced playing field for everybody. Because if you think about the classroom,
right,
that's where a lot of girls are trying to show their smarts and if teachers aren't encouraging that, then I read something in my research because I was doing lots of research about
good
this.
job, Amy.
I know, that's me, you know me. Actually, it's this band Bossy. I remember it's the very first. When a little boy asserts himself, he's called a leader. Yet when a little girl does the same, she risks being branded bossy.
Right.
Words like bossy send a message. Don't raise your hand or speak up. By middle school, girls are less interested in leading than boys, a trend that continues into adulthood. I thought that was interesting.
It's true though.
It is true.
It's really worth it.
So, Sandy, here's a question for you. To bring balance to this, you are a mother of 3 boys.
Mhm.
How, like, did you ever notice the opposite with the boys? Like they just naturally, um, you know, like did you ever have to balance it with them and have a conversation with them and say, you know what, we need to not call girls bossy. We need to, I don't know. I'm just trying to.
I think 2 things. First of all, they have me as their mother, so that doesn't give them, they're back to the barometer. And I've never experienced them even looking at females in a different way. You know what I mean? Now they have cousins, we have friends, and they all had friends that were girls, even growing up, that they would play with. They did all the boy sports stuff, but we have a big family. And so, if they're girls that are their age, even neighbors with cousins. So I would tell you, to answer your question about how I never had to tell them anything, because it didn't seem like they differentiated gender one way or the other. And I think the other thing is they have me as a mother, and they'd be the first ones to say, "Oh, mom runs the show." Um, and they'd be the first, if you asked every one of them, if I wasn't here and you'd say, "Is your mom bossy?" I don't think they'd hesitate, and they'd say, "Oh, pretty much, yeah." But she'd agree with that. But again, we have humor, right? I
Yeah,
don't.
right. You're not taking it personally.
It's
So
a
that's
fact of life. But
yeah.
here's the other thing: Garrett and I went on a walk. Um, for listeners, it's actually a Saturday. We're recording a Saturday afternoon. It's actually a beautiful fall Saturday afternoon. And Garrett and I went for a walk, and he asked what the podcast was going to be about, because I told him I need to get back because I got to shower. And, even though it's Saturday, I do need to shower because we tape these on Zoom, and I need a little bit of time. And he asked what it was about. And when I told him, and again, I sounds like I'm whining, so I apologize if I sound like I'm whining. But the comment I made to him is back to the kids. I said the boys would all say their mom's bossy, but on the same sense, when the shit hits the fan and they need somebody, I am the first phone call, and pretty much with everybody. And I'm going to say Garrett's the same way. I'm very resourceful, and I will take charge of a situation, and almost always I'm the first phone call when something great happens or something bad happens, or they don't know what to do, because mom's going to take charge and mom will figure it out. And so is that bossy? I'm going to push, um, I'm going to push, I'm going to take charge. Okay. I think for me, a big thing would be I naturally take charge. I just naturally take charge. So
Yeah.
do I like
It's
the word
leadership.
bossy? No.
It's
But with the
leadership.
boys, I, I don't know. I don't, I've never experienced that with them. If anything, what I would say is gender neutral is, I think if you have a parent, because, my dad was the one who took charge more than my mother. So there's a dominance with that parent. And I think I picked up I think, again, I'm going to talk purely general neutral. I picked up my dad in that, not my mom. It wasn't, oh, I had a strong female. I had a strong female, but she just wasn't as much a take charge person. My dad took that role, but I'm the one out of the three kids that has the most take charge attitude. And my siblings are boys. So I would tell you gender neutral, that my kids, some kind of like me to take charge, and they err on the side of not doing it themselves, only to a point that I have to stop sometimes because I'm doing too much. And that then you move from the word, and I'm not going to use bossy, I'm going to say take charge. Then you move from the word of controlling, right? Of independence, right? That's and then I have others. I have a son that's probably a little bit more take charge like me, but I tell you, generationally and from a parent, and when I look up to, it's kind of gender neutral in my family.
Good. That's good.
How about
I
you? How does it work for you and with your daughter's son, and having, because you have mixed kids, you have sister brother.
I do. And so I grew up, my parents were pretty balanced. Like they both had their things that they were in charge of, and they were in, and, my mom was a very strong 60s California girl who's,
Right.
made her mark in the relationship and the power of the relationship. So I had some good role models with that. Um, but my house, my girls are pretty empowered. But being empowered, I will say, in middle school, you could just kind of see them taking a step back. And it took some time for them to get back to stepping up. You could just kind of see them um, just kind of pausing, not being as confident in
Okay.
themselves. But then I think I would say high school that came back. I was 16, 17. They were then in their own, and then college, by all means, they've all really, they shine in college. And a lot of that is role model teachers. I'm just going to say they had some great teachers that really empowered them. And then I think my son has seen that, and it's pretty gender neutral here too. It's kind of the same concept of, um, he honors. Sorry, there's someone coming in. So you could probably hear the door, but there. I think it's pretty much accepted that everybody's on an equal footing for this generation. It feels like it is.
I think so too. And I think back to the reason, isn't it interesting? The reason I don't like the word bossy is I think for a female, it's always a negative and it's almost a name calling. Okay.
Yeah.
So back to, would it ever be okay for my sons to, would it ever be okay to call somebody bossy in a positive way? I don't think so. I mean, it's a
It doesn't
negative.
sound positive and it doesn't feel positive. Like I wouldn't, it's not something I would celebrate. Yes, somebody called me bossy. Like that's not,
It's
somebody once
interesting.
told me that I was a bit much. Somebody told me that. And
I
I
don't
really,
like that either.
I know, I was like, that stuck with me. Like I was like, that's sticking with me. What does that mean? So,
So,
well, yeah, let me tell you a story about my sister because I was talking to her about this. She's 5 years older than me. I'm second born. So she's the oldest, 5 years older than me. And she was like she wasn't the first grandchild. She was the second grandchild, but she was the first grandchild to live in the circle of adults. The other one
okay,
lived like 5 hours away. So she had her grandparents and she had her aunts and my parents, and the world revolved around my sister. Okay. Because she was this cute little
get it.
redhead girl. And, you know, but because of that, she developed a bit of an attitude as a young child of being bossy, because she could tell them they empowered it, they like, okay. So I don't remember my sister being bossy at all. Like she's a very even keeled, she's got opinions, but I would never call her, she is bossy, I would never say that. But because of that first 5 years of her life,
Right.
she earned that label within my mom's side of the family, and it stuck. And to the point where, just a few years ago, it came up, and she was like, that was when I was 5 years old.
Right.
I wish this would stop. And so it was kind of an interesting conversation because I called her and I was like, we're having this call, and um, I know you've gone through living through this label. And she said, to the point where she's heard it so much in her life that even when she steps up, she's she steps back because she doesn't want to be bossy.
And
And
she heard
so
so much.
it has stuck with her. And she knows it, but she still hears that voice in her head of don't be bossy. And um I think, and it's interesting to me because I would never I would never say she's that person. um but it's interesting, we've talked about this, the story that we have in our head about
Right.
ourselves and the things that we create. And that's one of the things that she was talking about is um and how she responds to being in leadership positions.
Amy, when we always talk, Amy and I always try to come up with clever little names for the podcast. And we said, oh, Bossy. So she's the boss. And I actually flipped it and made it Who's the Boss, because that was the name of the sitcom. And I felt it was a little more clever. But what was funny is she's the boss has a negative connotation. She's the boss, maybe not exactly like, oh, wow, maybe that's cool that she is a boss because it's usually he. But there's nothing negative about Who's the Boss. And you automatically are picturing Tony Danza and how great he's the head of the family. And it's this great show. And I thought, how interesting, just a slight change of the title gives you a whole different thought or visual on what that means. who's the boss,
You're
and
so right. Yeah.
versus she's the boss. And I don't know if you saw this one. I'm going to throw this one out here. See, I was the one, you're doing the great detailed research. I was finding the great memes. So Amy Poehler, and I love this. She said, I just love being by bossy women. I could be around them all day. To me, bossy is not a bad term at all. It means somebody's passionate and they're engaged and they're ambitious. And it doesn't mind leading. They don't mind leading. So it's interesting. So her point is, I don't care. I don't think bossy's a bad word at all. She's going against my whole point on what a derogatory word. She's like, I like bossy. Those are the women I like to hang out with. And I'm kind of going back to, was it what episode, Amy, where we talk? Oh, apologizing about how it gets so old being by people that apologize all the time. Well, I think it gets old being by women that are really submissive. You know, I don't want to
Mhm.
be by submissive women that tell me, just do as you're told and, try to make me feel good by saying you're okay. I like women who lead. I like women who challenge. I like, she's like her, I want to be by them all day long. It means they're passionate, engaged, and ambitious, and doesn't matter to me. And I thought that was interesting. Had you read that one before? Did you come across that one?
No, but I completely agree with her. But those, in my mind, are leaders, and but people have labeled them bossy,
Right.
and that's where it's turned into a negative connotation because most people don't like being called bossy. Because bossy doesn't mean you're leading; it means that you're telling everybody what to do.
Right. Doesn't even mean you're making progress.
No, it doesn't even mean you're making progress. It doesn't mean you're making good choices
Right.
about what you're supposed to do. You're just telling people what to do. That's it. Um, Another piece of that. So going, how do you make leadership not look bossy? So that was the other thing, which leadership shouldn't look bossy.
Look what they do to Nancy Pelosi. And I'm not here saying whether this isn't being about
Right.
political. I'm purely stating how they try to dehumanize her as a female. Back when they took the tape. So again, I don't care what if she's Democrat, Republican, liberal. This has nothing to do with that. This is taking a woman in a high leadership position and how they choose to dehumanize her and attack her is by taking pictures where she make her face look the most and she's pointing. And when they took the video of her and tried to drag out her voice to make it sound like she was drunk, it was awful. But
Yeah.
part of that was the image they wanted to portray was that she's overly ambitious, she's bossy, she is
Wow.
nothing about good leadership. So they're taking all these traits and they're putting it on steroids, right?
And overly ambitious. I have never heard someone say that about a man. Oh gosh, they're overly ambitious. It's more of something that would come towards a woman. Yeah, very interesting. Um, okay, so one of the things I was talking about leading versus being bossy, and I did more research because there's this servant leadership, and I
Yep.
don't know if you've ever heard
Love
of
servant
that.
leadership. I
I
believe
know.
in it with my whole heart.
And so if bossy is telling people what to do, then servant leadership is kind of the opposite because what you do with servant leadership is actually empowering people and serving them. So
Right.
you're everybody that you're leading, you're empowering and lifting them up and you're asking them, how can I assist you to get
Right.
this done? Like, what do you need from me to help you? And it's kind of a shift.
Hmm.
And I think the more people incorporate stuff like that, then there will be less bossiness.
I like that. And actually I've never I saw you had put this in the notes and I'm like, I like the idea of servant leadership when walking that tight line of being bossy, because I think if you err being somebody who takes charge, if you err on the servant leadership, I think you're always going to win, right?
Oh, I
People
agree.
might still take you talk about it. It's going to reinforce that tightrope of, am I doing the right thing? Because back to me taking charge doesn't mean that I'm always right. And I've made the comment to you, Amy, it happened, actually it would have been 2 weeks ago, because I think we brought this up as a topic, that there was a client I was working with, and I really had to take a step back because I really just wanted to take charge of a situation that, um, I could easily take charge of it. Somebody else could, but I had to take a step back and ask myself, okay, Sandy, this doesn't have to be you. Yes, you could do it very effectively, but you don't have to be in control of this. But I had to really tell myself to take a step back. And my point in saying that is, I think taking a servant leadership attitude would help work through some of those decisions and alleviate being in control. Not all the time, but less, being able to empower other people, being able to work at their level. Um, and it's a good thought process on situations before diving all in, too.
Yeah, I agree.
Do you think, Amy, that a lot of it, I always go back to motive. If somebody wants to be in control because they like the power and that's their motivation, is they really want, and not that that's bad. I had somebody tell me one time one of their top values was power, and it kind of took me aback. And I'm like, is that bad? Because power could be leadership. It could be, I want to be the president of the United States. But, it kind of took me aback because most women don't want power, right? That you might hear it more. So I felt myself being judgy on it, thinking, well, that's a bad value. And I thought, no, that's their value. That's just not my value, right? But
Right.
what's your intent? Where are you coming from? Are you trying to be in charge because you're trying to get the next promotion, and so you're going to stomp over everybody else just to make yourself look good? Well, that's bad. Are you doing it because you want the team to make a goal and maybe it's just coming across? I think a lot of it is going back to the motive too, on what people's intent, what their core intent is on leading, taking charge, and how they're coming across.
I think you really hit on something there, um, that the what the team's goal is, and if because if you are leading and making all the decisions, that means you think it's all about the consequences of you and how it's going to affect you versus, is the whole team responsible for this, good and bad, or is it all about me being responsible for it? And so if you think it's just you, then you're going to be more bossy. You're going to be telling people what to do. If you think it's the whole team's going to win or the whole team's going to lose, then it's more collaborative.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, so we're doing pretty good on time.
Yay.
Yay.
Yay. Can I
Uh,
tell can I tell one funny story?
yeah.
Okay, so the funny story is, isn't it funny how you think of these things, you're reminded? I was the junior achievement queen all through my kids. That was the one thing I always did, even though I
Oh,
worked a lot and I worked full time. I loved to teach junior achievement. And I'll still have kids saying, I remember Mrs. Lane when you taught her, you brought donuts in for our third grade junior achievement. But that was the one thing that I always, almost every year, anytime it was available that they were teaching, having a junior achievement class, and my background's finance, so I loved it. But I would go in, I was the junior achievement teacher. And in kindergarten year, for one of my kids, I don't remember which one, there was another mother who had volunteered to be junior achievement teacher as well. So the kindergarten teacher said, sent us both of an email and said, why don't you co-do it? And I said, no, thank you. Um, And I was very nice, but like this woman, she never talked to me again. She thought it was the rudest thing, but like I had no interest in but it didn't have to do with this. This gets back to, I was thinking about why I thought of this story and why I thought about, when I was thinking about this podcast, it's like, why do I feel like, what is my motivating factor of being in charge? You know, when I'm in charge, what's my motivating factor? Because it's not power. I could care less. You know, I meet people, I'll tell them I'm the secretary. I don't care. You know, I was always that way. I don't, that it just, you know, but for me, I would tell you it's efficiency, Amy. I know that I like things to get done because one of my top values is fun. And I also know that the more cooks you have in the kitchen, the more time it takes, the more deliberation. And I'm one of those people that just gets things done. And I don't usually ask. Maybe that's why I don't like feedback as much, because it might slow down my process. But it really has to do with efficiency for me. And it really does, because the quicker we can get this done and the faster we get to the outcome. I hate drama. I don't like a ton of debating, and I like to get it done. All I could think about with co-teaching this class was how much work that would be to have to figure out, like, because they give you it's not made for two people, it's made for one person. And I was just visualizing how we were going to break up the plan, and that there would be twice as much work just trying to figure out how to teach it and who was doing what. And that's why I wasn't interested. But I think she thought I just had to be, no, thank you, I'm not going to co-teach it. So I guess motive does mean something, but in the same sense, I got to stop. Maybe it can be more efficient, but maybe if I would have gotten the feedback, maybe it would have been more fun, and I would have learned something from her if I would have done it,
Yeah.
rather than wanting to be in charge for efficiency.
That's some good self-awareness though. And I'm just going to say I'm a lot like you. I recently was called out. I got some feedback because I had requested input from people to create this report. Like we have all these wheelhouses. And so I got all of the wheelhouses together, got their reports, and then I compiled everything and I wrote the report
Okay.
and I submitted it. And one of the people in charge of one of the wheelhouses was like, I would have liked to read the report before you submitted it. I was like,
Oh, Amy, that's so something I would do. I'm like all about just do it and ask for forgiveness later, which is not right. But I mean, you will.
like that was not personal at all. It was just me being efficient.
Right. And again, the motive is efficiency and
Right.
thinking, okay, this is all good. Or maybe I'm materiality. It's not that big of a deal. I don't need 20 people to look at it. And maybe that's why I don't do very well in governmental type things, because there's so many layers. It's just governmental, even not-for-profit systems, because they need to be that way. There's a lot of layers of controls that feels like bureaucracy to me and like inefficiency. And so I struggle in those environments. I'm not saying I'm right. We need those controls, but I tend to
Right.
aim, shoot, fire. So
You know what's in your wheelhouse. All right. Our first question is, do you call people out when you feel you are unfairly called bossy? Um, so I don't know if I've ever been called bossy. I
really,
I am really I was trying to put myself in this scenario of someone calling me bossy, and I'm not sure. Maybe like in a teasing, funny moment, but never like a serious, wow, you're being really bossy. So um I don't know about this. How about you?
not, I think what I hear a lot is she runs the show. She runs the show. And a few times bossy. And it does, what I tell you is I think I'm going to, if I am called that again, I'm going to call him out. Because interestingly, it usually does come from a guy. And interestingly, it's usually from a guy who also is pretty bossy himself. And,
Yeah.
uh, if you're called something you think is unfair, I think you should call people out. Doesn't
Well,
mean you have to be combative, and just say, I don't really like that.
right. And I
I
think
don't really
that's
like that.
fair to do that. But here's the other thing is standing up for anybody who's called bossy.
Exactly.
I
Exactly.
mean, maybe it's not me being called bossy, but if somebody called one of my girls bossy, or one of my friends bossy, or one of my colleagues bossy,
And the
I
reality is it's behind their back a lot of times too. Back when I was the only female at the table, they love to do things like that and call, not to their face,
right.
but part of calling people out is even more so when it's in situations like that, because that's cowardice. That's name calling. There's no good that comes out of that. And if you're going to share feedback, give them that feedback.
Right. And that's intentionally just trying to make people look bad when you're talking about them behind their back and saying things like that. That's not constructive feedback. It's different if they're approaching you and saying, you're putting off this bossy, then that's more okay. I don't like that term, but let's be constructive about this. Let's tell me exactly, what does that mean? Give me some examples, because bossy in my mind could be leadership, but maybe I'm doing it wrong, or, how do I use this feedback? Talking about people behind their back, I don't like that.
No, I don't like
I
that.
don't
Give
like to
them
talk
some
about people.
constructive.
Yeah.
And my thing always has been, this is a little trick I always do. Started this a long time ago. It works brilliantly. And this actually helps a lot with that whole inefficient time, how I don't like drama. I hate gossip. I hate gossip. I don't get it. And I can tell you, with my closest friends, we never talk about people. Why on earth would we talk about other people and, about like that, what the term of gossip is? I don't get it. I don't understand it. And
Right.
we would never do that. So when people would come into my office and say, so and so is, we'll just say bossy. So and so is bossy, and it's not me, but everybody else has a problem with her because she's, trying to push. And here's what I do. Let's bring her into the office. Great point. That is good feedback or whatever. Let's call her into the office. Let's have that talk. No, 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 don't bring her in. I'm like, why wouldn't I not bring her in? This is causing some pain. Let's have a conversation. And I tell you, 9 out of 10 times, they didn't want me to call the person in. They wanted to talk about this person without them in there. And they learned that if they came in my office and they had something to say about somebody else in a very positive way, I would bring that other person in. So guess what? I didn't hear the gossip. If you're going to come to me with something and it included in any shape or form that another person, we were going to bring that other person in.
I
And
love that,
it
because
works
that's
great.
like, if it's really a problem, then we need to figure this out and solve it.
And have a very constructive, open conversation about it. And it blew my mind how that would just, people would, oh, no, no, no. And they'd never speak for themselves either. It tended to be the people who said, everybody's coming to me. I really don't have a problem, but everybody else does about the other person. And you know what? Back to efficiency in my life, maybe was I taking charge? Was I kind of bossing the situation? Hell yes, I was. And there was much less drama. There was much better. There were times that we did bring people in the office. We had great conversations and lickety split. Most of the time that person, we had different ways to take on the problem, right? And resolve it than just debating it and talking about it to exhaustion and getting nowhere behind each other's backs.
So do you know that saying of the thing about talking about people? It's like the
Eleanor Roosevelt saying, I love that saying. Is that what you're talking about?
I think maybe
I'm going to
about
find it.
it.
Small-minded people.
Small-minded people talk about people. Then, anyway, wise people talk about ideas or something like that. But there's like 3. It's so true. Like, you can tell the people who talk about ideas and talk about interesting things, and then there are other people who like to just talk about other people.
Okay, here we go. Great minds discuss ideas. Average minds discuss events. Small minds discuss people. I love this.
I know.
I love great minds. It doesn't mean that we all don't come back to a little bit of average minds where we can't be great all the time, but usually it's events. Like if we're going to talk about an event, the election, right?
Right.
Maybe we'll talk about the election, but great minds then think about ideas. Gosh, what should the electoral, well, is democracy supposed to be? Conceptually, how can this be different in 4 years? That's the kind of conversations.
And then the small minds talk about the people, but they talk about them in the negative. Like they focus on what's wrong with them, what's, you know, and what's, anyway, I love that quote. Very
I do
good. Thank
too,
you for
Amy.
finding that for me. That was
I was
quick.
typing away
You
where there's a
got it.
will, there's a way. I was taking charge.
That's good. But that's to keep in mind when you are talking about people. And if you are calling people bossy, like, what's your intent? Like, let's be more, let's be better about this.
Let's be better about this. That's exactly it. Let's be better.
Let's
Let's
be
try to be
better.
better.
Right. Okay, final discussion question. What's the real in these situations and what's the ideal?
I think a real is that you are putting yourself out there when you lead and you take charge. You're
I
putting
agree.
yourself out there, and it's going to get personal sometimes, uh, because you're putting yourself out there that people will judge and they'll make comments.
Right.
That's the real. And I think this is me. And I think the other real is only we have the free will to make that take charge attitude or that leadership impactful in a positive way. And it is a tightrope, and we need to continually challenge ourselves to put ourselves out there, to be leaders, and to lead in a way that we want to be remembered for, and in a positive way. Servant leadership, whatever techniques those are, to always challenge ourselves to be the best version of ourselves.
Right. And that's a great answer. And I think the real is this is happening. Like, this is happening. People are getting called bossy. Little girls are getting called bossy, hopefully less than when we were little, but, and women are getting called bossy and taking steps to fix that. And so either stop saying it yourself or empowering those women to stand up for
Yep.
themselves,
I like
or
empowering.
standing up for them, in the situations and correcting it, because sometimes it's hard for someone who is getting that word themselves to speak up. And so, but if you're a witness to it, let's stop this, because we don't want, like, I think of my sister all the time that this is in her mind so much. And if people hear it over and over again, then it sticks with them for a long time. And so if we can fix that and fix the conversation, then it won't stay in their mind for that long. It won't be part of their story.
We're learning from your sister. I like it.
I love, she's a good teacher of many things. I love it. And then I guess the ideal in this situation is, if it happens to you, step up. And well, the ideal would be that just the word bossy went away. Or maybe that it didn't have a negative connotation. That would be the real ideal. Yeah. I don't
Be
know.
more accepting of people. Don't don't take the easy way out. To me, that's the smallest mind, is name calling. So if it's in a stance of trying to cut somebody down, that's saying she's bossy. Oh, his girlfriend was crazy. I mean, I think of certain words that go with women to easily tear them down. And that's not even small minded. That's called no minded. And so if it's used in a context of trying to tear somebody down,
Right.
stop
So
people from doing that.
I love that, because you could say she's being bossy and it sounds like you're trying to tear her down. But then you could say, wow, she is the boss. And that sounds like you're celebrating it and she's rocking it. So let's change it to that. She is the boss.
Yeah,
let's just change it. Yeah, I love it. All right, let's do our wrap question. I am so excited because it's Thanksgiving. We're posting this on Thanksgiving. We're coming into Thanksgiving week and we'll be posting this. So what are your plans for Thanksgiving? It's a different Thanksgiving this year.
It's a different Thanksgiving, and it's my turn now. Amy had talked about when we did Stop Apologizing how she had COVID. My husband and I just got tested for COVID. And I don't have the results back yet, but I would be shocked if we didn't have it. And we have been really sick, or I've been cold sick. He's had the more traditional COVID conditions. So this Thanksgiving, I am ordering my food online, which I've never done for Thanksgiving before. I'm literally, he's going to audit my list and we're going to keep it super simple. Like green bean casserole, we'll have the turkey. But think about when you're ordering food online,
Yeah.
and I hope I can taste it. Okay.
Oh, I know. Oh my
I hope
gosh.
I can taste it, but we're going to keep it really, really simple. And we're just going to be grateful for good health. How about that?
That's great. That's a good thing to be grateful for. So funny that you mentioned the tasting because when I was sick with COVID, that's the first thing you texted me. Maybe not the first thing, but you're like, "Did you
Close.
do your taste?" She's like, "That's my
Such a
greatest fear."
Well, my smell I started a new peppermint candle. I always have a candle going, and peppermint, I thought this is going to be a little bit strong. I noticed that I've been going all day and I'm like, does this have no odor to it? And I forgot about, went up, I could smell nothing. Now I've tried different things. Like I'm just going to do the, maybe a
Yeah.
little bit. I can smell the
You know what?
coffee.
I didn't really notice, like I drank my coffee one morning. Actually, it was, I think the morning you texted me. I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. I haven't noticed. And then I ate a broccoli salad with bacon and red onions. It was left over from the night before, and I ate it for lunch that day. And I started eating it. I was like, what happened to this? This doesn't
The
like it has a lot
flavor.
of
That's
flavor.
good.
I'm like, where did? And I was like, oh no, here it is. So, but mine only lasted 24 hours. So hopefully,
We'll
if you
see.
do lose it, hopefully it's not Thanksgiving Day, and you can enjoy the good meal.
Man, our 2020 is going to be like back to Thanksgiving. Garrett and I looking at my iPad and ordering our turkey online, you know?
I know. Well, yes, we're having Thanksgiving dinner at our house, but it's just us, the people in our house.
Mhm.
Taylor lives in town. She'll be here, and Reagan's coming up from Kansas City. And thankfully, three of us have already have
Got
COVID.
it. Yeah.
One has not, like he maybe have had it, but we didn't get him tested. Reagan has not. But I think we're going to be, it's just going to be the five of us. My other daughter can't come from Chicago. So I did send her a care package. She just got it the
Did
other
you get
day.
it?
She
Because I
got
remember
it.
you said you did some bread and was it a macaroni corn casserole, which actually sounds divine. If
It,
you can taste it.
my kid's favorite. I'm making it here too because they requested it here. But yeah, I sent her all the ingredients to make all that, like the pumpkin bread and the other stuff and the recipes. So
Nice.
she can do a little baking and not have to go buy all the spices and everything. And she was pretty excited because
That's
she had
awesome.
actually told her boyfriend's family that she wanted the corn and macaroni um, casserole. And so they were like, we don't know what you're talking about. So she's like,
She has
okay,
it. She can
I
make
have it now. So I don't know if she's going to make it up to their house or not. But anyway,
it.
I am just going to be grateful that we're all healthy and everybody's staying safe in our family.
We did. I know we don't always talk about the next episodes, but Amy and I were talking about this and about how everybody wants 2020 to be over with. And we're like, what would be, we kind of went back and forth on should we tape after Thanksgiving? We're like, yeah, we want to. And we want to talk about gratitude in this crazy year, how eh, eh, an attitude of gratitude with a question mark when you're in 2020. But I think that's really what's gotten us by. And we're not done yet. So let's finish it with a bang. So it's all going to be all about gratitude next week.
Right. Episode 19 will be gratitude.
Wow. Wow. Okay. One more thing that I forgot to say with Thanksgiving is I am addicted to season 4 of The Crown. Do you watch The Crown?
I watched it last weekend.
Well, see, I was gonna watch it over Thanksgiving.
Yeah,
I'm a kid in a candy shop. I can't put that. It is so flippin' good.
I know. I completely agree. I
Oh
love
my
it.
gosh, it's so good.
So another show I'll recommend for Thanksgiving weekend is The Queen's Gambit. Have you
Oh,
watched
I
that?
loved it. I
I
loved it. I loved it.
know. I agree. Great show. So
Great
anyway,
show. I would totally recommend that. And even the Queen, so well, both of them so well filmed.
Yeah.
cast. I even read an article with the Queen's Gambit that master chess play. This is like the first film that they got their input in making it. It's very authentic, and I
Wow.
learned a lot. I love
Me
movies that I
too.
learn a lot, and I'm a better person after watching it. And we might think we know a lot about the Crown, but a lot of history in there. You know, they're taking British history and the Margaret Thatcher. Oh, she nailed that character. I mean,
Right.
yeah.
Right. It made me want to try to make my hair like that. Like do
Yes.
a big with all the hairspray. I'm like, I wonder if I could do a Margaret Thatcher hairdo,
No, if
like
this was
Halloween.
if they would have released The Crown before Halloween and it wasn't COVID, that would
Right.
have been the number one. Could you imagine all the people that would be trying to look like the characters off of The
Right.
Crown?
Right. Princess Diana, everybody. Yes, it was great. Okay.
Anyway, had to throw that in. Okay,
Okay.
until next week,
Happy
have a
Thanksgiving.
happy Thanksgiving.
You have a great week. I hope you guys are feeling better and
Yes,
till the
time to
next
move on.
podcast.
All right,
All right.
thank you. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.